All right. Gallup has just dropped their 2025 employee engagement data, and it's not great. Actually, it's pretty alarming, but it's pretty alarming every single year, which is mind-blowing to me because this every year just gets worse. So employee engagement has actually dropped to a 10-year low, and we're going to go through it together because I think it's fascinating. But the main point of this is do not become this person. And I'm going to tell you three ways that you can avoid being the person in the statistics. So we're talking about 8 million fewer engaged employees since 2020. Just to give you an idea what that looks like, that's the population of New York City. So population of New York City size of an amount of individuals are completely disengaged at work. And what that means is there's basically just clocking in, clocking out, not bringing any innovation, not really caring about their career, just kind of really numb when it comes to their career, which as a career person, it is completely depressing to me. And I don't want us to be this way. So I'm going to share some tips of how to not do it. And if you're under 40 years old listening to this, it's even worse for you. Gen Z and younger millennials saw an 8 percentage point drop in just 5 years. Wild. So here's my confession here. It's not just about bad companies, right? I am fair. It's not all on the bad company or the bad manager. It's really about you taking control of your engagement. And we're going to talk about how we do that. All right, let me break down what's actually happening. We're going to go through this report together. So, as I mentioned, like 31% of the US employees are actively engaged at work. So, only 31%, which means 69% are like checked out. So, that's 7 out of 10 people essentially are just going through the motions of the day or just actively disengaged. And then, actually, something that really caught my attention is the biggest drops that we're talking about, like in terms of numbers, are in the basic things. So, like, one of them is the fact that people just don't know what's expected of them. So there's like this lack of clarity across board, right? So it had like a 9% drop since 2020. The other one is people feeling like the company cares for them as a person, like as a human being, not just a machine or a number. And the third one that had like kind of the biggest drop, it looks like, is the opportunities to learn and grow. And this really particularly hit the young workers. And what's interesting is that a lot of when the Gallup asked employees what would actually help, 35% of them said, we just want communication. We just want to have some kind of communication. We don't need the fancy perks. We want transparency. We want to feel like we can trust the company and so on. So anyway, and so it's just interesting to see that it's such basic things. And as I'm reading this, like one person said, if I felt listened to, right, when they have a complaint, the response is always like, remember why you're here, practice gratitude, which doesn't actually solve the problem. And I agree with that. Like, we can't just tell people like practice gratitude. We actually want to know what's happening. We want to have a little bit more information about where the company's headed, where's my career headed. So anyway, and I get it. A lot of it feels like it's out of your control, but I'm all about practicality, no BS. So let's actually focus on things that we can control. And this is where we're going to discuss the three things you can actually do. So let's dive into that. So the first one that I have to give is like this: just stay curious, right? There was in the report, it talked about like, oh, there's not a lot of opportunities to learn and grow and so on, especially for the young individuals, right? And that is because most people are just waiting for their company to hand them like development opportunities. And I literally just did a video on the biggest mistakes you make in your career that makes it stall. And one of those mistakes is leaving the development opportunities for your manager or for the company. You want them to just come and hand it to you. It just doesn't work that way. Ideally, should it? Yes, but we don't live in an ideal world and we cannot control and have that expectation. But it also does not mean we just sit around and wait and blame the external factors of why we're not growing our career. So what can you actually do? Number one, come ready for your interactions with your managers in your one-to-one sessions. Don't just expect that they're going to come with this game plan to make you, grow in the career. No, come with actually expectation that your manager is there to provide resources and open doors, but you need to understand what is it that you actually want to do. Do your own research, take accountability. Ton of free resources online of how to get started. Don't tell me you don't know how to get started with the world of access and information. ChatGPT out there. ChatGPT does actually an excellent job in some career coaching aspects. So I have to give it that. So, use that. Right. Another thing you can do is like, if you're really excited to grow with the company, find a person who's doing the things that you actually might want to do in the company, and like what steps did they take. Observe them for a little bit, have a conversation with them, have a virtual or in-person coffee with them, like ask them questions, right? Like how did they get there, understand their career story, see what you can kind of gather from them in terms of what can you learn and what can you apply for your own career growth in a company, right? The other thing to do is, stay curious about what else can you learn. Don't just be so specialized in like in your own little world and this tunnel vision where you're just completely forgetting what else you can learn. What are some other things that are coming up in your role that you need to be aware of, right? Where can you continue to add on to the tools in your toolkit, essentially in your career toolkit? What are the tools? What are the things that you can learn to really, continue to add value in the role that you're in? And honestly, like when everybody else is checked out, this is what's going to differentiate you, because I see this in real time in companies where people are just checked out. They're just clocking in, clocking out. This small thing, just staying curious, will make you so different for so many, 69% to be exact, according to Gallup, of all the people that are completely disengaged. Small thing, stay curious. All right, let's move on to number two. The thing you can do is look ahead and think about where you might need to pivot if that's something that you have to do. So pivoting is a great thing, and being really future focused is what's going to get you there. All right, so one of the other things that was mentioned in the report is that most people have no idea like what the success actually looks like in their job. So like they don't know what's expected and so on, right? And so when people don't have clarity, they're less likely to be engaged. However, what are some things that you can do to have that clarity, even if you don't know what that's not coming from your manager, is you can actually map out where does your role, looking at the trajectory, your career trajectory historically, at this particular company. Where do typically people start in your role? Where do they end up? Like, what does that look like, right? And if you see that there's not a really clear trajectory in your particular company, then there could be different reasons for that. It could be because the company's small, could be that because the specific particular department or the role is, just kind of being outdated. Maybe it's shifting. Nonetheless, it will give you that information. It's like, is there a future in this role? If not, like, where do I need to pivot, right? Or maybe I really like this career path, and I know that actually in other companies, this career path looks a lot different because I've done my research, and maybe I asked around and I talked to people who are in those roles in different industries, in different companies, right? So again, doing your own research, taking accountability, right? So that will give you some insight of like where to pivot or what additional skills you need to make that pivot. And it will also give you ideas of like, oh, actually, I didn't realize this career has this way that it can go, right? It's not just this way. There's so many different elements to it that I can actually pivot into. All of these things, just being curious and being future focused, will actually give you the information you need, right? And again, like if according to Gallup, like a lot of people are disengaged because there's no clarity of where the career is going. And frankly speaking, like, should you have that clarity? Yes. But again, we focus on ourselves. We focus on things we can control. So by doing this, by staying curious and doing your own research, understanding where your career might potentially grow into, this will really, really help you stay engaged in your role, because you are going to be so much more informed and by default, hopefully engaged. All right, the third one is continue to find ways to add value. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, people are paying you to do X job because you're adding value in that particular space, right? And so really understanding what is that value that you bring to the table? What makes you unique from everybody else? And here's some ways that you can actually add that value. So one of the ways is to actually continue to ask questions of your managers, of different maybe departments head, if you have those relationships, of your team members, and ask them like, what's the biggest challenge they have right now? What are some problems that they're working on? What are some things that they're solving, right? If you don't automatically know that, but you feel like you've already maxed out on your role and you feel like you've hit that ceiling and you're like, oh, I don't know where else I can add value, these questions will spark some of those conversations, and it will also let them know like, hey, this person is really curious. Again, going back to number one, right? You're already going to stand out from like 69% of people who are not doing this, right? So not only are you going to basically position yourself as somebody who wants to learn, who wants to continue to add value, but then also you will have input of information that is valuable for you to understand what is it that you need to do to continue to get to grow in your career, to continue to get promotions, to continue to elevate yourself financially in an organization. You need to be able to add clear value. If you stagnate, you're not really adding that value anymore. anymore. And that's just standard. Like I've seen people in organizations that spend like 8, 9 years, and I know you're comfortable and cozy in that role. I get it, but it becomes very difficult for the organization to justify why they should promote you, why they should give you more money if you've just your value kind of stagnated as well. So be very careful with that. The other thing you need to do when it comes to, after you found that information, when it comes to really positioning yourself as somebody who adds value, is communicate that. Listen, regardless of the unfairness of the world of work, the people that get promoted, the people that grow in companies and get those bonuses and so on, are the ones that are the most visible. So if you're working remotely and you never turn your camera on, you never have a one-on-one conversation, you never work on relationship building internally in your organization, people don't know what you're doing. And if you're not, even if you are really introverted, for example, I don't know, find creative ways to actually send that information so people who need to know the value bringing, the things you're learning, the things you're kind of creating and being curious about, the right people need to know about this. If you're just doing it and then expecting that somehow they're reading your mind, it doesn't work like that. So find ways to become more visible in front of specific audiences that are important, that are decision makers in your organization, on your teams, to showcase them the value that you're actually adding and the new ways that you're doing that. And another part of it here is, be a team player. What I mean by that is help other people succeed in their roles as well. That is such a underrated value thing that we can do, because we always focus so much on ourselves. But if you just help other people succeed, not only is that partially leadership, right? Like you don't need to have a leader title to be a leader. So not only is this a leadership thing, but also you creating other people around you, sparking that value-driven activities around other people. You are helping other people grow, and it's has this by default effect that you will also grow with them in a lot of cases, right? So finding ways to add value, to help other people add value as well, helping them succeed in their roles, will actually make you more valuable. And another big reason that this helps is that managers see people who are making their lives easier, right? People who are sparking innovation, people who are adding value. And also in the world of layoffs and cutting costs and all of that, people who stay are the ones that visibly add value to the company. Companies don't want to get rid of high performers or people who bring value. They want to keep that. It's very expensive to replace people. So make sure you're adding that value. All right, I know I've covered a lot, but if you take away anything from this, it's just the three takeaways, right? Because I do not want you to be in millions of people that are disengaged, because a lot of the disengagement factors are actually a lot of things that we can control and keep ourselves engaged. All right, so the three things that we discussed is stay curious, right? Don't just stagnate. Number two is look ahead and map out your career trajectory. What does that look like internally, externally? Take accountability. And the third one is add value continuously. Find ways to do that. What does that look like internally? Continue to add value and make it visible. All right. When everyone else is checking out, don't join them. Please do not join them. Be different, stand out. All right. If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe, share, drop your comments, questions that you have about your career, and I'll make sure to address it in one of these episodes. Until next time.